Good morning, gentlemen. Wonderful to talk to you again. I'm going to talk to you today on a very important topic, and that concerns the Ukraine war as usual. I will also talk about the repercussions this war is going to have over entire Europe. Everything is not simple in life, and we know that. And what is happening now is again a creation of the Anglo-Saxon powers, and there are massive repercussions in Europe. Let me start with and tell you that in France there have been agitations in Paris and other cities wherein the French public has asked that France withdraw from NATO and the EU. Now that's a very important point. Withdraw from NATO and the EU. Poland at the same time is asking for nuclear weapons to be placed in its territory. It's made a request or words to that effect to the Americans. I don't know whether the Americans are going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it. The third development is that the G7 nations are calling a meeting to how to deal with the Russians, because Vladimir Putin is like an uncaged tiger. Now everybody had assumed, and there was a lot of people talking, the Russian army is retreating, battle is won, Ukraine is the winner. Fine, it's not so easy. Then came the attack on the bridge which links Crimea with Russia. Now that's a very important lifeline and is a prestigious project. And the men responsible for it, as per the Russians, are the Ukrainian special squad. When Zelensky authorized this, perhaps he didn't know what's going to be the repercussions of that. And the repercussions have been pretty terrible, Firstly, let's be very clear, the Ukrainian army has not been able to roll back the Russians over the entire territory. They have won some battles, but that is not enough. If taking a few hundred square miles of territory doesn't mean victory. The Russians have now fired 75 rockets on 7 Ukrainian cities, including the capital Kyiv. And it's been almost like hell coming in from the skies. The Ukrainian president is perturbed and he says, the Russians are trying to obliterate us from the world map. That means erase us from the world map. I don't know what's the Russian intention, but Vladimir Putin had to react. And where is the reaction? The reaction has come that he has removed the previous army commander and replaced him with an air force commander, and that's significant because it means it's going to be a strategic air war over the Ukraine. When an Air Force man takes over, his concentration is always on air power. I have yet failed to understand why, when the war started between Russia and Ukraine, the Russians didn't use air power. The first thing they should have done was to bomb Ukraine to submission. That's what the Americans did in Iraq, if you remember. They bombed Iraq for 70 days. The Americans were bombing North Vietnam for a good part of 6 years. They used their B-52 long-range heavy bombers. But the Russians did nothing. That means a very badly and poorly planned invasion. I fail to understand what was in the mind of Vladimir Putin. He was treating it as a limited military engagement, and as I've said in my previous lectures, there's nothing like limited military engagement. You are at war or you're not at war. And this is what has happened. Now, Putin is pushed to the wall. In 7 months, the Russians by now should have obliterated, wiped out the defenses of the Ukrainians, whatever weapons they were getting from America, whatever help they were getting from the EU and the Germany and all these countries. does not matter. The Russians had the superiority. They had control over the air. The Americans dare not declare a no-fly zone over Ukraine like they had done over Bosnia and Iraq. On the contrary, having the air space entirely to their advantage, they failed. If you remember, the Indians had taken over a similar area of East Pakistan inside 13 days. That was meticulous planning, hamlet by hamlet, village by village. While the Russians never did anything, but now Putin has woken up. I don't say he's going to win the war, because the cat is already out of the bag, but he can create mayhem and terror, and that's what's happening. And a realization has come to Zelensky that he just can't go and blow up a bridge in Russia and then get away with it. The Russian reaction has been of a high proportion. They have bombed or hit with rockets 7 cities with 75 rockets falling all over Ukraine. And this is the first law. We don't know what's Putin going to do next. And this has an effect on the morale of the Ukrainians. It's going to have an effect. Is the West, the Anglo-Saxon powers, going to respond to this Russian attack? I don't think so. They'll give more weapons. They'll hold another G7 meeting here and there, and that's all. Because now the stakes are very high. Vladimir Putin is not going to give up. And Zelensky also is a tenacious man. He's holding on. He should have agreed for negotiations, done something. But he said there's no negotiations with Russia now. Not at all. So when two countries are at loggerheads, the war will continue until one of them wipes the other out. And chances of Ukrainian wiping out the Russians is not there. Russia's too big a country, while the chances of Ukraine at some stage giving up is a possibility. Russia has already integrated or annexed 4 important provinces of eastern Ukraine into Russia. And there's another development. The President of Belarus has now joined the Russians. He has said that we are the ally of Russia, and in case the Belarusian army moves in from the north into Ukraine, it's going to be hard for the Ukrainians to keep fighting on 2 fronts. You will be fighting on the northern front, which is bordering Belarus. You will be fighting on the eastern front, where the Russians are in strength. The Russians have a paucity of manpower. That part, I think, must be accepted. Otherwise, they would have called for a partial mobilization and called in 300,000 people to join back, and a large number of them were unfitted there to go. And lots of people were escaping. I mean, they didn't want to go into the draft, come and fight. So Putin has to show results. I'm very sure the war is not going to end very soon, and all I can say is that the Russians have some success. They may not use the final option, the nuclear bomb. If they use that, Ukraine will have no choice but to surrender. You remember, they required only 2 bombs to finish the Japanese, though they had occupied thousands of square miles of territory in China and Indochina, which was under their control. But yet Hirohito said, hands up. So the thing that Ukraine can stand out on a nuclear onslaught is 0. And as I've already said, the Americans are going to intervene. They give weapons, that's about all. Because the moment the Americans intervene, it's World War III and the destruction of Eastern Europe, Eastern and Western Europe, all over. Nobody wants that. There is opposition in France. I'm sure there's opposition in Germany. There's opposition in Italy. They don't want this war to continue because they're suffering hardship. The prices are going on. The English economy has tanked, all because of this. And the English Prime Minister, Liz Truss, is in trouble. She doesn't know what to do. The French are agitating. They don't want to be part of NATO. Germans and now the Poles. So you see, the Poles are, as far as the Bulgarians and these small countries are concerned, they want to fight Russia, but they are just incapable and inconsequential. And God save these countries, that's all I'll say. Because if Poland is going to keep nuclear weapons on their territory, they're open to a nuclear attack. And the control of the weapons is not going to be with Poland. It will remain with the Americans. Even now, the Americans have nuclear weapons in Germany, Italy and Turkey. But the button is not with any of these three countries. They're only there as storage depots. So Americans are not fools. Let's not think that they are very foolish persons. They are intelligent and they know they lost every war which they fought after 1945. I'll make a video on that a little later. And I think they don't want to lose the Ukraine and get a bad name themselves. Well, gentlemen, things are hotting up and you have seen what's happened. Russians have reacted. Belarus on their side. The border is opening up. Another front may open up. The French and so many other nations are in economic problem. England having almost 0% growth, and Germany also. And Germans should not forget, they lost the war with Russia, that is during World War II, and something similar could happen if they again try to militarize and things come on the side of the Ukrainians. Historical blunder has been committed. Ukraine has been part of the USSR for a long time, and I see no reason why it can't be incorporated back into Russia at the moment. They are one people, one race. Anyway, that's not my cup of tea. Whatever happens in the future, as a military historian who studies, I know that the war is going on. It's not ended, and the Russians have reacted in a very devastating manner. And let's hope that sanity prevails on Mr. Zelensky. I think the whole problem is Mr. Zelensky. And if he goes, everything is okay. I close now, gentlemen. Wish you all the best. I hope you can like and share my video. God bless you all. And that's Jai Hind.